I've been sitting here visiting with everyone in the comments, and then I looked up and realized I was supposed to be live. So, hi everyone. Welcome to the June Book Pick of the Month live show for the Wine and Crime Book Club, where we are going to talk about The Lake of the Dead. I cannot say his name. I believe it is Andre. I'm just not going to try. I'm going to just show it up real close. This gentleman right here. And I want to say hello to everyone in the comments. Stacy is here. She is furiously trying to finish up the end. Lauren from Paperback Empire is here. If I had known, Lauren, you were going to cram this one in, I might would have tried to sneak you in on this live show with me. Which, by the way, if you guys would like to participate in the live show at the end of the month, let me know. I will definitely get you guys on stream if you're willing, and we can just have an on-camera conversation. Yay! I'm so glad that you made it. I know you said yesterday you were going to try and make it, so I'm so happy you're here, Rachel. And I think that's everybody so far that is out there in the comments. And so what I like to do at the start of these is for anyone who might be watching or watches this later, I like to talk about a non-spoiler summary of what the story is about. And then I ask for anyone who are in the comments to give their ratings as far as their enjoyment of the book that we read. And this one, to me, is like a real life game of Clue. We have a friend group, which is always a good thing. I love when we have a good group of close friends that have been friends for a long time when they get into shenanigans together. But one of them, Mr. Werner, is an author himself, and he decides he's going to rent this secluded cabin in the woods, a sort of writer's retreat. Now, there is a story about this cabin that has been around for at least 100 years where, gosh, I'm going to butcher his name, Tor Gruvik, lived there, and for reasons, he ends up killing his sister, her lover, and then he commits suicide by throwing himself in the nearby lake. Now, this is where our friend Mr. Werner decides he's going to take his writer's retreat. A few weeks go by, and the authorities contact the sister and say he's disappeared, but the evidence we have found leads us to think he committed suicide by throwing himself into this lake. Now, the other part of that local legend is anybody who stayed in that cabin after Tor Gruvik committed those murders and killed himself, they're possessed by his spirit, and they're driven crazy until they commit suicide. So all of this is going around in the friend group's mind, because of course the sister tells all of the friends what's happened, and they decide, well, we're just going to go all together to this cabin, and we're going to stay there, and we're going to investigate, and we're going to find out what really happened to our friend. And so that's where things get really good and interesting, and it's really hilarious because there's one who believes that something supernatural happened. There's one that's just there. He wants to just look at it from a psychology viewpoint. He wants to investigate this suicidal mania spot. And then there's one that just suspects foul play. So everybody's sort of kind of looking at each other, and then they're believing this Tor Gruvik is taking over his spirit, because it happens to be near the anniversary of the night when all of this happened. So it's a very good atmosphere. It's just a mystery. There's a murder. There's the supernatural horror flair to it. It sounds like a really good time. And it's just wasn't. There's no secret. If you're in the Discord, I did not like it. Oh yes. Okay, Lauren. Well, I'm going to hold you to that. So before we get any further into spoilers, before we get into that, everybody who's in the chat, what did you what's your opinion of this book? If you use a rating system, what do you use? Since Goodreads and all of the little places I leave my reviews require me to choose a star rating, I'm gonna choose 2. So I would love to see what you guys think of it. A lot of folks that took place in the Discord discussion as we were reading through the book rated this one very low. And it's not that it's not a bad writing style. I mean, it was written in 1942. It is a classic. It is a different style than what we're used to reading. And even though it's a short book, it's less than 200 pages, it was work for me to get through. I could not sit and read more than about 30 pages at a time. Now, it could also be I was reading another book kind of at the same time that I loved, and it may be I just only wanted to read that book. Let's see. Rachel gave it 2 as well. Yeah, it's okay. So let me address the elephant in the room, and even the gentleman who wrote the introduction to this one, because this has just recently been translated for us over here in America. I want to say in February of 2022. And he literally tries to defend a problem with this book. And the problem is this guy really, it's my interpretation, but he said some really derogatory things about women. And I mean, he literally on the first page, he starts out with, I want to say, well, that's the introduction. Let me get to actual page 1 here. The second line of this book: when women tell a story, they usually start with the point of it, assuming it has a point, which most often it doesn't. Now, the guy who wrote the introduction was like, oh, he's just being humorous. And if you have to write an introduction and point that out, to me, that means the author did not do a good job of making it actually seem the way he wanted it to be taken. Now, I do understand, I've been told that Norwegians have a distinctly different style as far as what they think is funny versus what we think is funny. And I'm just not usually one that takes offense to that sort of thing. But I was like, okay, it's a sign of the times. Let me keep going. And so I kept going. And I mean, the story was good. The atmosphere was great. I was eating it up. But then he would throw in another one of those little niggling comments. And I was like, bro, every time my feathers get smoothed down and I'm into your story, you say something, and it's often enough that it would take me out of the story, because it would literally, like in my head, I'd hear the record scratch was like, and I would stop, and I'm like, dude, that's just rude. And there's just some really weird choices of style and writing. Is like this one line, I got a really big kick out of it. In autumn, our city is like a beautiful woman of 38. That is so specific. I was like, just stuff like that. Well, but that wasn't an offensive line or anything. I just thought that was so odd and strangely specific to an age of a woman that it took me out of the story. So maybe at that point I was just nitpicking, but let's see. Lauren says 3-ish for me. I really like the concept, but it was just way too outdated. Yeah, it definitely showed its age, and I really at this point, well, no, I don't want to say that. I've read some classics that I absolutely loved, and then a lot that I haven't. Stacy gives it 3. Parody, yeah. Actually, that I can agree with that. If it had been marketed better, but instead it's marketed as kind of more along the lines of a horror mystery tale. Andreas has made it. Amanda, we're glad you made it. Very Nordic, yeah. And I mean, to this day, from what I understand, this book never goes out of print over in Norway. it's one of those that still, I want to say, is always at least, it never falls below the top 3 spot, which is amazing. I mean, that is absolutely outstanding. I've not seen the movie adaptation. I want to. I've been trying to find somewhere I could get my hands on it, but I haven't found it on any of our streaming services. So I've got my husband working on it to see if he can find a copy for me. 3, okay. Well, I guess I was just a little more harsh on it, and which is highly unusual for me. A lot of people pick on me for being a lenient reviewer, and they say, "Oh, Lezlie loves everything she reads," which is not true. They're just not paying attention. There's a lot of stuff that I actually don't like. I just don't really spend a whole lot of time talking about stuff I don't like. I'd rather talk about something I love versus something I didn't love. And this one, I really thought it was going to work for me, but now I did, let's see. I think everybody that's here has actually read the book, but if you're watching this at a late, if you're watching this in the future, now's the time when you need to back out of here, because we're about to get into spoilers. I want to talk about some of the things that happened and just get to the nitty-gritty of the story with everyone here who has read it. So again, if you haven't read this book and you're planning to read it, this is where it's time to ease on out. We're happy you came. All right. For everyone that is here, what did you guys think about the writing style? I know I saw someone mentioned earlier it was very outdated. I think it was Lauren, and it was, but it is not. It wasn't as bad as some of the older classics I've read. It made sense. It wasn't choppy. It just had some strange descriptions here and there. Yes, absolutely. I mean, when my library had this book and I was going to check it out from my library, but when I saw the cover, I thought, man, this cover, I'm one of those, I've seen a lot of videos here lately where people are talking about how the black and blue covers of books is just a color scheme that stands out to them and draws them in. I am another one of those. And when I saw this one, I just absolutely loved it. So, and I agree. When looking at the cover, I thought that maybe there was some, this girl was like a siren who lived in the lake, and she was the one that called people to their deaths. And, I was sad. It tricked me. I thought this was going to be a supernatural horror story. And it kind of presented itself that way the whole time until the end. And while I really loved that twist into it just being kind of a mundane thing, while I loved that, I thought it was clever and I was not expecting it. I was kind of like, well, dang, I wanted something to be in that lake. I wanted Tor Gruvik to be a real thing, and maybe it, that, because after I read that legend, I thought that's Tor's sister, and she is getting her revenge for being murdered on everybody who comes to her cabin later. Yeah. So I was a little sad about that, but I appreciate that. I mean, when you're reading a thriller, I much prefer not to figure out what's going to happen at the end. I love when I'm surprised. So that's, yeah, I thought that was where it was going to go. I thought that was where it was going to go. And as far as the characters, did you guys like our cast of characters? And who was your favorite, if you had a favorite? And were any of you like me and wondered the entire time, just why was Mork part of this friend group? I kept, nobody seemed to like him. And I kept going, which one of these people is he actually friends with? Because he seemed to argue with all of them. And, it's just kind of like, okay, well, this person is married to this person, and these people call each other friends, and these people call each other friends, but nobody, I think one time towards the end, the author, which we got this from the perspective of, oh, I forgot the gentleman who's telling us the story that's married to, what is his name? He was telling the story the whole time and people didn't. Okay, so he's married to Sonia, which I kind of want to read Andre's other books because Sonia, in a previous book, Sonia was actually accused of murder in one of his previous stories, and I kind of want to know if she did. But I don't remember. All right, I don't remember the guy who's telling us the story, but I just, at the very end, he mentioned somebody called Mork a friend, but let's see. The writing style is, yeah. And, and that's probably why I did not mind the writing style that much. The way Andre wrote, it did not feel like 1942. It, with a few little tweaks, it really could seem like it was written in a closer time frame to closer to where we are. Oh, and I keep forgetting it is a translation. And that definitely accounts for probably some of those weird sentences, like the one where he's describing how beautiful the autumn city is in relation to a 38-year-old woman. Really. So with Sonia, she was very brave, as we all know, but she was literally kept in the kitchen the whole time. I don't know if she just really loved to cook or if that's the only use the author could find for her until he needed her at the end. But yeah, they never went grocery shopping and they walked up there. So I was really confused, especially after they came back to the cabin and noticed a bunch of the groceries had been taken. And so, yeah. Correct. I know that in the introduction, it was actually pointed out that the three of the male characters were, one was modeled after, I believe it was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, one was after Freud, and I forget what the third one was. But yeah, Sonia was amazing. I would not be a Sonia. For one, I would not have gone out there to that cabin. No. And I guess where this story did tell its age a little bit is when Gran was found drowned in the shallows of the lake. They didn't immediately call the authorities. They didn't go get the sheriff. They pulled his body out themselves and took him back to the cabin. I was like going, we need some CSI out here, guys. We should not be touching this body. I thought that was quite odd. But yeah, Sonia was something else, but she's a lot braver soul than I would be. Bless your heart. You got this, Amanda. Yeah. So that seems to be the fan favorite is Sonia. Kai, I don't know if it was Bug or Buggy. I remember his name. He's the character that really made me feel this was like a game of Clue. I loved it was like a cross between Clue and Jessica Lansbury from Murder, She Wrote at the end, where she's just like laying it all out there. Like that's kind of how he was telling them everything, that how he had figured it all out, which I thought I got a kick out of that because I used to love watching Murder, She Wrote when I was a little girl. Yeah, nobody seemed to care. And they also didn't really react in a way that, if a group of my friends went to a secluded cabin to investigate the mysterious disappearance, suicide of one of our friends. And two of them, a boy and a girl, were living together with the intent to get married. And then all of a sudden, the girl starts hooking up with one of the other friends. Like, that just would not be a casual observance of the rest of us. Like, these days, we would be all in each other's business. Like, wait a minute. Yes, yes. Mork was really kind of very argumentative when discussing his approach, but he had the most interesting viewpoint of what was going on. He was the one that was determined it was something supernatural, and he also had me dying at the end when the big reveals have all taken place. And he is like, I'm going to go write an article about, he's like, yes, go ahead and write your book about this story. I can't wait to write my article about you. I was dying laughing. Like, that was probably my favorite part of the entire story, was that dialogue. Scooby-Doo. Yeah. But I think if and speaking of Scooby-Doo, why do authors love to use killing a dog as a plot device? Like, don't put the dog in there. I realize that he was doing that in order. I keep hitting my watch on my desk. I'm so sorry. I move around my hands when I talk, so I'm constantly like running and stuff. But like, just don't put the dog in there. Find another way to lend suspicion and confirmation on your suicide scene other than the guy killing his dog. If I have two dogs, Milo and Bandit, and if I were trying to hatch some scheme where I wanted people to think I had committed suicide, there's no way on God's green earth I could ever cause harm to either one of my dogs. There's just, it's not happening. And so, unfortunately, I'm one of those people that anytime a dog, especially if it's a dog, if a dog is killed or hurt in a story I'm reading, because of the type of reader that I am, I'm a visual reader, and I just automatically, Milo or Bandit is what I'm picturing in that story. So it always hurts my feelings, and I'm actually one of those. I actually don't like any animal death in stories, period. Especially when the authors sometimes will really go in on those descriptions, and I'm like, yeah, me too. Yes, absolutely. Some of the worst ugly crying I have done in the past 5 years have been strictly animal deaths. Let's see, what else we got here? Atmosphere. Now, this is where I think this author really shone. He built this atmosphere. He built the atmosphere so well. I think that's a little bit where I felt let down, is he just had the cabin, the description of the setting, the woods around the cabin, just how they had to walk to the cabin. They couldn't even drive to it. It was so secluded. Just the footprints of when Bjorn Werner was pretending he was Thor, where he's walking around with one foot and he had the peg leg looking thing. The lake, how it seemed to glow from the bottom up, like all of that was, and the thunderstorm. Man, he did such an amazing job with the atmosphere, and I was visualizing it. I swear I could hear that thunder, y'all, during that really bad thunderstorm. He did so well that, and it just leaned really hard into the supernatural horror vibe. I think that's a little bit why when it turned out to be just a everyday, no, not every day, just a human scheme, I felt a little let down. I think that's what let me down a little bit. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, atmosphere was definitely where it was at for me for this one. And I love atmosphere. When I'm able to picture myself in that world, like I am literally someone standing to the side and just watching everything happening and I'm listening to the dialogue, especially at the end, well near the end when Kai and the narrator, I cannot remember the narrator's name, Sonya's husband, when they're down at the lake watching and they're just laying on the ground, just a description of like just how cold it was and how quiet it was and how still they were for how long. I mean, I was right there with them laying on the ground getting dirty. So that's where the author really shone, in my opinion. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Ashley. Yeah, definitely my favorite thing. Is there anything else that you guys? Well, why is this going off? There we go. Was there anything else about the book that you just really loved, or are you like me and I waited till I finished the book and I went back and read the introduction, and that's where I found out that the character Sonia, she actually made her first appearance in a previous novel where she was suspected of murder. I actually kind of want to go and read that one and see just more of Andre's work. Maybe this book of his didn't, well, I guess I would need to see if it was translated. Maybe this one didn't work for me, but that doesn't mean that something else by this author wouldn't be a home run hit for me. I'm generally really easy to please as far as books when I pick them myself. I feel like I know myself pretty well and I'm pretty good at picking winners. If the back of the book is a true representation of what's actually between the front and back cover. There have been a few recently that I've picked up because the back of the book sounded amazing and it was like, oh, this is what this is all about. And it's something completely different. And I don't mean the little blurbs where every book says, oh, this is like Game of Thrones meets some other movie that is well known. No, I don't ever read those. Yeah, I can understand that. I think I finished this one yesterday. My days are mixed up. Or maybe it was Thursday. I think I finished it Thursday and then I went back and read the introduction. This one just really took me some time. I think what was happening is I would get to reading, it would be interesting, but then I would hit one of those weird, maybe translated sentences, or he would make another one of his remarks. Like, if it were today and he wrote that, I mean, he would probably, women would be just beating down his door. Well, no, because I'm sure if it's still a national over in Norway, it's still a top seller. But again, it's just a difference of what you find humorous, I guess. Yeah, it's almost to a point with those comparisons that it does more to make me not want to read a book, because there was one recently that was like, oh, if you like Joe Abercrombie, George R.R. Martin, then you're going to love this. There was nothing like either of those two authors and what I read. Yeah. I did get a kick out of it. Like he did not want to go, but the group kind of made him, he was just kind of caught up in the group wanting to go, and he was wanting to go home. And then was it Mork that was like, all right, guys, this is it. somebody is fixing to die. It's time for us to go, like yesterday. And then the narrator was like, whew, I'm so glad he said that. And he's like, yep, I agree. And then they end up staying. That was too funny. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're all big fans of Sonya. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely I I mean, yeah, but he did a good job as far as, well, what he described was accurate as far as dialogue for the most part. For the most part. Oh, he had, but he sort of redeemed himself when the sister was sleepwalking the first time, and he kind of woke up himself, and he was like, wait a minute, I need to step in and do something. And it was, although I was laughing because he took his wife's bathrobe, can y'all just, for me, I was envisioning that scene happening, and in my mind, there, and well, okay, so at one point in the novel, he's like 100, he mentions he's 163 pounds, but for some reason, I pictured him bigger than that. And so when he took his wife, and Sonya is described as beautiful and very lithe, and so when I was picturing him running out and grabbing her bathrobe, of course it didn't fit. It just like barely covered him, and he was like poking out of it. So that was my visualization of that scene. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always banging myself on something. So I would never be able to sneak up on anybody because I'm gonna walk into something, and like I'm one of those. I don't know how this happens, but every single time I'm either putting a load of clothes into the washing machine, putting them in, or pulling them out, somehow I whack myself. Like last night, you might can see it. This sucker's bruised. Like I caught this little knob on my washing machine, putting in some clothes to wash. It hurt so bad. Yeah. So there was actually a lot of moments in the story that had me smiling, and I did enjoy it. But I kept waiting for something to happen at that lake. And I this is a terrible thing to say, but we all know I'm the girl that I love to watch anything about serial killers. I love to read everything I can about serial killers. In fact, I was researching some new release thrillers coming up later in this year, and there was one about a serial killer that was so cool. I'll have to share that with y'all. But I was like, there wasn't enough death. I was like, I just kept waiting for something to come out of that lake and start killing folks, because it was mentioned, I want to say, in the book description about how all of the friends go to the lake, but they don't all make it back. So I'm thinking it's going to be like Friday the 13th. They're all going to go out there, and there's only going to be like the one person survive. And I was like, it's going to be Sonya. She's going to be our final girl. Yeah, I and it just, maybe it just was not translated well. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I keep forgetting this is a translated work, and maybe those sections just weren't translated in a way that those of us who don't know any better, like, it just didn't translate well for us to pick that up as humorous. And I mean, because normally I can read stuff that'll hack off a lot of people, and then I'm just reading it and just like going, oh, okay, and just, it doesn't bother me usually. Bless his heart. Yeah, that's why I really want to read, which is funny because while I'm sitting over here complaining about what some of the things that he did with this book, he also managed to make me interested enough in his characters to want to read more of his work. So, it's one of those weird situations. Yeah. Yeah. If it had happened less often, but it was like literally every time I'm like, all right, I'm not mad anymore. Let's keep going. Let's see what happens. He would make some other remark about how fragile we are. And I'm thinking, let me show you how fragile I am, buddy. Yes, I absolutely thought it was the police officer. I was like, what better person to cover up a murder? Because I was like, the police officer totally murdered Mr. Werner and disposed of the body, and then was like, oh, he left this note. That's how come I was up here. But at the end, I was like, that's why Kai invited the police officer to come stay at the cabin while he and the narrator went to the lake, because he wanted him at the cabin rather than at the lake. And then that actually didn't work out. And I totally forgot all this time that extra element of that other killer being loose around them. I really thought something else was going to be involved with that, but I guess that was just a little bit of a little throw us off the trail of what was really going on. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. It was. But so what do you guys think? Are you curious enough to, if it's translated, I would have to look and see if his other works are translated, which I think they sound like they're more of the actual murder mystery vibe instead of having the, oh wait, what's Andrea saying? Yeah. Oh man. How could I forget that? Oh gosh. That, yeah. I don't have wine today. I've got root beer. Yeah, I did not see that coming at all. Just like that whole part of the story where we find out that both her and her brother were seeing Kai about being in love with their sibling, like that was just, I was shocked. I was really shocked over that. Yeah. I guess he figured that was how he would work in the connection between Tor Gruvik, that story, to why Mr. Werner did what he did. But that was a bit of a stretch. Yeah. There you go. You found it. We need to get it blurbed. Hi, Nancy. I'm excited for some Riley Sager next month. I've never read anything by him, even though I have a few of his books on my shelf. Of course, not the one we're reading. So I'm actually going to maybe pop over to my used bookstore this afternoon and see if I can score a copy. If not, I'm just going to get it from my library. But I'm excited to read his work. Yeah, I am. I mean, it and he did this long before. Was it VC Andrews that had, was it Flower in the Attics, that series that had the brother sister thing? And y'all, my library had that series, the VC Andrews series. They let me check that series out when I was in junior high, which my opinion, I was not of an age or maturity to be able to read a story like that and understand really what was going on. Now, I was a shelter child. I was very sheltered. I don't even think I knew what sex was until I was like in my double digit as far as years. Like I know at 9 years old, I had no idea. So I just checked that book out one day and I was like, what is this? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's really the books that are this old, you have to be in the mood. You have to want to read and want to dissect, especially when it's translated too. Like I was thinking earlier, I was about to say, oh, I just don't like classics, I don't think. But then again, I was like, well, I love John Steinbeck, William Faulkner, but then I was like, well, they're American classics. It's it's probably the translation that I had the issue with. But yeah, I have to be in a mood. Yeah, so the one thing that I think if the author had done this would have absolutely had a bit of a change and a tweak, something I would have loved if they had been twins. I went and spot checked. I don't think it was ever mentioned that they were twins, but if they had been twins, because the telepathic thing has always been something kind of explored with twins, being able to they know instinctively if one another's in danger or something like that. Like I was obsessed with that growing up. I'm still obsessed with it. I will again, when I was researching upcoming releases, thrillers, and all that sort of fun thing, there's one about twins. And literally, as soon as I saw it was a story about twins, I was like, well, that's going on my to read list. Yeah, I was kind of surprised at that. I and I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. Is it Lillian? I think the J is not actually pronounced as a J. She was so because we met her when her brother was thought to be dead. At any rate, he was missing. And evidence showed that it was likely not good. And which also kind of confused me because if they were able to kind of communicate with one another, how was it she didn't pick up on him still being alive? But she was very subdued. And then when we later find out from Sonia when she's having the discussion with her husband that that Lillian was a little bit of a social butterfly, I was kind of shocked by that. And but I liked it. I liked that there was layers to the characters that perhaps we didn't know. And so then when one of them, I want to say Harold Gran was the one that was suspecting foul play, and they were kind of suspecting the different characters in the group because Gran and Lillian were living together and seeing one another, and then they got threatening notes to quit seeing each other. And so when that got mentioned about Lillian not being the person that our narrator thought she was, that lent more credence toward it being one of the friend group possibly murdering one another. So he did some really amazing things to keep us guessing. I never suspected that Mr. Warner was behind all of it, that he set all of this up. I suspected actually Kai Bug or Buggy, however you pronounce his last name. I suspected him and I suspected the sheriff. Other than that, I had no clue. Lewis! Hello, my friend. Nancy, I believe the majority of folks gave it 3 stars. Rachel and I gave it 2 stars. It just didn't hit us very well. We did not receive it well. Yeah. Yeah. It and that's probably something I should have done. I should have probably looked at the time frame, the time period to see what sort of things were happening at that time that would have influenced what the author was writing and reflecting in his work, just like our authors do. Actually, is another. Yeah, I think you dodged a bullet. I'm glad I read it. It's definitely one that I'm glad I experienced, and it made me curious to read more by them. But yeah, yeah, I definitely think he wrote it a little bit ahead of his time for sure. It's definitely held up, and I also bet that if I were able to read it in the language it was actually written in, I think it would have been a little bit better. And if I shared had a little bit, I don't know, maybe I was just easily offended, but I do know that I had it paired up. I was reading An Alchemy. I'm actually still reading it. An Alchemy of Mask and Mirrors by Curtis Craddock. That book is in the running to be one of my top favorites of the year. It was a surprise hit. I have been obsessed with reading it. My husband has come to bed twice this week with me sitting up and still in bed, still sitting up, holding my Kindle, sound asleep because I was fighting to stay awake to keep reading. And I just wonder if I hadn't been reading another book that I was literally dying to finish whatever I had to do to get to that book, I wonder if it would have been different. So maybe I'll keep it around, keep it on the shelf, and maybe I'll pick it up as a reread and see what happens then. Because I know that I'm one of those people that different times in my life, different experiences will change my perspective, and I might reread a book and it hit differently, or something happened to me that allows me to relate to a character better. So I think I might just keep it around and give it a reread, and maybe I'll look into a few other things surrounding that era and just the characters. He modeled some of his characters after other really famous authors of the time, and I think maybe we'll experiment and I'll try that one again later. Absolutely, absolutely. I typically don't talk about books that I'm not a huge fan of a whole lot. So, oh yeah, I mean it's a gorgeous cover, and I'm still going to try and get my hands on a copy of the movie, the one that came out in 1958. I don't know if there were two adaptations or just the one, but I'm still trying to find a copy of that movie. I want to watch the movie and just do a comparison of the two and just see how, what they changed. Did they lean into the supernatural? Did they keep the story the same? I definitely want to see that movie. I want to see if the visualization of whoever adapted it matched what I was seeing in these characters. I'm always curious about that. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm big on cover bars, so I definitely sprung for it. I'm trying to limit myself on buying the number of books I buy in a month. So I'm usually trying to just keep it down to maybe 2 or 3. But that one was I totally had it checked out from my library, and then I thought, well, let me just see what kind of prices is on it. So yeah, I I made it through, and I I did like what he did. I was just I liked what he did with it, but I was hoping for something else, and I shouldn't, you know. And maybe when I reread it, because I know how it ends, that will, kind of skew my perspective going like when I reread it, I know what's going to happen, and that'll take away that expectation or hope of something else happening different. So it might actually enhance for a better reread, but it's going to take me being in the right mood, because this one, because it has a little bit of age on it. It's one I'm just going to have to be in the mood, which is a weird book to say I have to be kind of a mood reader for. But friends, that is all that I have on The Lake of the Dead. I'm so excited to have you all read this one with me and just to be able to dissect it and just talk about it, because as I talked about it, I think my opinion of it improved a little bit. I think I can at least maybe rank it. I think I could fairly say it's a 3-star. I mean, it was definitely an okay read for me. I'm not mad that I read it. It was not a DNF. I enjoyed it enough to keep going. And now I'm curious about the author and some of his other works. So if I read the book and it makes me want to read something else by the author, that's not a lose situation. But what we have here? Yes. Oh yeah, because this one came out. This was chosen. This came out February of 2022. Yeah, he's one that I would probably go and look and see what else he's done, Andreas, and probably put my hands on. Now I do have another Valencourt book, which I wonder if he's the artist. So I have this one. I'm going to read at Christmas. The Valencourt book of Victorian ghost stories. I wonder if he did this cover, because the cover is outstanding. Looking really fast. I can't find it fast when I want to. Does it have it on the front? No, it doesn't tell me who did the cover. But if you look close, the Christmas tree has skulls on it, and I just absolutely love that. I can't wait for Christmas ghost stories. So I don't know if oh no, cover by Henry. Have no idea how to say his last name. I apologize. So, yep, you and I both are going to be keeping an eye out for those covers. But guys, I'm going to let you all go and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday afternoons and evenings. I think I'm going to slip over to my little used bookstore and see what they have hiding on their shelves. I need a couple of books for July, and I'm hoping they'll have some there that I can pick up and do a little retail therapy shopping. Yeah, I finally found it on the back cover hiding. I was expecting it to be on the copyright page. But again, thank you all so much for joining me for this discussion of this story. I will definitely reread this one sometime in the very distant future, and hopefully you guys will still be around in Discord and I can chat and tell you all about it. But thanks for joining me. Have a great rest of your day, and I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. And for those of you that have not read The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager and you want to join us, the information to the Discord will be in the description box. And come and join us, read that one, and we'll be talking about that one at the end of July. Thanks, guys. See you later. Oh, I forgot to hit the button.